Today, we're opening up a case file that's all about trust, secrets, and what happens when a single missing object, a simple book, manages to tear an entire small town apart. Wow, what a premise, right? This isn't just a story about something getting stolen. It's about what happens when the very foundation of a community just disappears along with it. Okay, let's get into it. So, to really understand this case, we have to start by looking at the town itself. This first part is all about a town's fragile trust. So, picture this, Kalyanpur. It's one of those small towns where everybody knows everybody, you know? Your reputation isn't just important, it's everything. It's the kind of place where trust is built over decades, not just years. And for a solid 20 years, the most trusted man in town was Mahesh Agarwal. Now, he ran the local jewelry shop, sure, but he was way more than that. He was kind of the unofficial town banker, the keeper of everyone's savings, the guy you'd go to for a loan with just a handshake. Now get this. The way all this trust was recorded, it wasn't on some fancy computer. It was in this, the ledger. Just an old, worn-out paper book. But for the folks in Kalyanpur, that book was a symbol of absolute integrity. They felt it was more reliable than any real bank. If your name was in that book, your word was gold.
And then, just like that, the one thing holding it all together was shattered. Which brings us right to Section 2, the ledger vanishes.
The first crack in this perfect system appeared when a customer, a woman named Sunita, came into the shop, totally frantic. She knew she'd made a payment on her loan, but when she looked, the entry was gone. For the first time ever, the ledger was wrong. And it's crazy just how fast things completely unraveled from there. So Monday afternoon, Sunita confronts Mahesh. By that same evening, Mahesh is pointing the finger at his assistant Ravi, and they have this huge argument. Then, Tuesday morning, the shop is a mess, completely ransacked, and the ledger, the heart of the town's trust, is just gone. So, with the ledger missing, all that trust was replaced by chaos and suspicion. This takes us to Section 3. An investigation begins. You can just imagine the rumors flying around, right? The whole town was asking the same things. Who would do this? Was it someone who owed a ton of money and wanted to wipe the slate clean? Or was it someone from inside, trying to cheat their own neighbors? And the police? Well, they had almost nothing to go on. Just some really grainy CCTV footage from an alley nearby. You couldn't make out any faces, and one muddy footprint by the back door. That's it. Not a whole lot to work with. This is when Detective Ramesh shows up. And this guy, he had a reputation for seeing things other people missed. His whole philosophy was, look beyond the obvious. People lie about money for many reasons. He knew this case wasn't just about a stolen book. It was about the secrets people were keeping. And as soon as Ramesh started digging, he realized that this perfect town's reputation was built on some pretty shaky ground. Let's get into Section 4, Secrets and Suspects. So here's where things get really complicated. You have what the town believed, that Mahesh was a saint and this was just a simple robbery. But the reality? Detective Ramesh found out that Mahesh himself had been messing with the records, skimming small amounts to pay for his son's tuition. He was planning to pay it all back, but still, the trust was broken. With Mahesh's perfect image now tarnished, the town needed a simple explanation, a clear villain, and suspicion landed squarely on the easiest target, his assistant, Ravi. On the surface, the case against Ravi looked pretty solid. He was seen leaving late, he had some debts of his own, and everyone knew he just argued with Mahesh. But Detective Ramesh wasn't buying it. The footprint outside, way too small to be Ravi's. That grainy CCTV footage, it looked more like a woman in the alley, not a man. The whole thing just felt too easy. So the investigation was basically at a dead end. They had the wrong guy, and the real trail had gone cold. The breakthrough was about to come from a place nobody ever would have guessed. Section 5, the Lotus Clue. So really, what do you do here? You've got no real witnesses, your main suspect is probably innocent, and the whole town is wrapped up in its own secrets. How do you find the truth? Well, the answer wasn't in some fancy forensic lab or a dramatic interrogation. No, it was hidden in something completely ordinary, something that happens every single morning, a routine milk delivery. You're not going to believe this. Detective Ramesh, just following a hunch, goes and talks to the local milkman. And the milkman remembers something. He was paid in cash late that night by a woman, and he remembered one tiny little detail about her sari. It had a small embroidered lotus on it. And that one detail, that tiny embroidered lotus, broke the entire case wide open. It led the detective right back to the very first person who sounded the alarm, Sunita. When he confronted her, she broke down and confessed everything. She said, "I didn't mean to steal. I borrowed the ledger to erase my name. I panicked and hid the book." It was her own fear about her debt that sent the whole town into a spiral. So the truth was out and the case was solved. But the real work, fixing what had been broken, was just getting started. And that brings us to our final section, the real currency. So how does a town come back from this? Well, they took it step by step. First, Sunita confessed and gave back the ledger. Second, Ravi was obviously released. But here's the key part. Mahesh stood up and publicly apologized for his own lies. Third, Sunita faced consequences, but not jail, community service. And finally, they all came together to create a new, more transparent system, turning this whole crisis into a hard-earned lesson. And that really is the biggest takeaway from the whole case. The ledger itself was just paper and ink. The real currency in a place like Kalyanpur is trust. And what this story shows us, loud and clear, is that in a small town, secrets will always end up costing you more than money.